This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Week 1 of Browns camp has concluded. Now, today they were in pads technically for the first time, but they will be in team drills in pads tomorrow. And I believe after that, they do a walkthrough. They head back from Greenbrier back to Cleveland, and then they have a public practice in Berea on August 1st. And then the Hall of Fame game, August 3rd. We are days away, not even a week away anymore, days away from watching some Cleveland Browns football. So that's very exciting, but nonetheless, let's get into it. Let's talk about what we know or what we've seen from the first week of practice. And the first thing I want to stress to Browns fans is what you want to see in camp isn't one side of the ball dominating and the other side of the ball just kind of like flying under the radar. What you want to see is a back and forth battle, right? You want to see Deshaun make some great throws. You want to see the receivers make some great catches. You want to see the DBs make some great plays. You want a back and forth. I think we have not had in recent memory how do I put this gently? We have just not had good teams here in Cleveland. We've had some teams that have had solid records, but when it comes to having it all at the quarterback position, offensive line, like this is the most complete team, or at least it projects to be the most complete team that this team's had since the 80s. And one of the things we've forgotten since, like me, a lot of us have been born in an era where like that just wasn't happening for the team, is what training camp should feel like, what it should look like, and what does it look like for other teams, right? Because for us, we've been so worried about the quarterback position for the last 25 years that that's all we have the capacity to focus on, or at least that's all we know to focus on in camp, because every camp seems like a referendum on the quarterback that's in camp. And this year isn't that much different. There's a little bit of a referendum happening with Deshaun Watson, but Deshaun Watson, unlike any other quarterback that stepped in here, has 4 years of top level NFL play versus like a Baker Mayfield who put up a good year and a half, or a Brian Hoyer who put up a couple of good games. Like, it's just a different beast. So we are so used to hyper focusing on the quarterback position because every year it's felt like that. And then we've gone through an even more intense period, right? 2018, we're hyper focusing on Baker Mayfield and Tyrod Taylor because Baker Mayfield just got drafted #1 overall. And Tyrod was somebody who made the Pro Bowl, was a playoff quarterback a couple years ago. We were really excited about that, but we weren't sure what that was going to look like. Okay, we fast forward to 2019. Baker Mayfield has that good first year. Now we're hyper focusing on Baker Mayfield because we're expecting the leap, right? The mythical leap. For every, and I want to stress this to Steeler fans or anybody who has a young quarterback, man, that year 2 leap, that's like chasing the dragon. And if you know what chasing the dragon is, you get the reference, right? But that year 2 leap can be chasing the dragon. If you don't know, you're going to have to Google it. I can't explain it on YouTube. This is a PG-13 show. But everybody wants the Josh Allen leap. Everybody wants, these giant leaps, the Peyton Manning leap, the Drew Brees leap. We all want these giant leaps. But those leaps are named after those individuals because those leaps are that rare, right? Usually you get a decline. Usually you get a flat line. Usually you get nothing. in year two, right? The year two leap has been overblown, but we were focused on it in 2019, right? We wanted that 2019 leap. We were begging for it with Baker Mayfield. The season happens. He stinks. Well, now we focused even more on Baker Mayfield because now we got to make sure he's not a bum. And it was the pandemic, so it wasn't nothing else to do. So now we definitely focusing on Baker Mayfield to see if he could bounce back, because you know what, it was Freddie Kitchens' fault. We got Kevin Stefanski coming in here, new offense. All right, we're focusing on the quarterback position. Baker Mayfield goes out there, cooks in 2020. Now we're really focusing on the quarterback position 2021, because now it's supposed to be another leap for Baker Mayfield, right? We're worried about that leap, and then he stinks, and then we trade for Deshaun Watson and bring in Jacoby Brissett, and we're extra focused on the quarterback position, and we're still focused on the quarterback position. You see what I mean here? I mean, I could go back further and further and further and further, but it seems like ever since expansion, every single training camp has been a referendum on the quarterback position. And this year's not that much different again. I said that before, but it is a little different, right? Like if Deshaun comes out there, looks fine, all right, cool. I'm pretty sure he is going to be what he was in the NFL before the suspension. So that's a little bit of a different spot that we're in. We're so focused on the quarterback play. And the reason I brought up that whole tangent was to say this. We want so badly to have that, to be validated about Deshaun Watson in training camp, that we will see any type of progress made by the defense at his expense as a reason to panic instead of what it is. I've already seen it. It's crazy. He's not even playing bad in camp, but I've already seen it. I've seen people freaking out about, oh, his red zone drill wasn't crisp. Oh my God, Martin Emerson picked him off in a red zone drill. That's good. There's a difference between throwing an interception because you have no idea where to throw the football and throwing an interception because somebody on the defense made a play. There's a difference between making a completion because your defense is incompetent and somebody left somebody wide open, and you making a great throw and making a great play on a good defender that was in good position. You got to pay attention to these highlights. You got to pay attention to how these highlights have shaken off. You have to ask yourself when you're watching these highlights, are these highlights the result of somebody not doing their job and being incompetent? Or are these highlights the results of great athletes going at it and one just had to win? That's how you know, right? If you should be excited, if not. What I've noticed from the highlights that I have seen during camp this year is you're seeing a lot more stuff that's in that category that we want. We're seeing a lot of like well-placed footballs, just great throws. I mean, it used to be a rarity that a clip like that would come out. Now, Bake would give you a couple during camp, no doubt, but it seems like on a daily basis, whenever they do a team drill, I'm seeing a new throw by Deshaun Watson. That's just like an incredible throw, or a new route run by Elijah Moore. That's just an incredible route. I understand that camp, it's going to be easy to panic because you're at the mercy of the very few of the eyewitness accounts of the very few people that are there in the social media clips that you can get your hands on. It's a very controlled environment. You don't have access to it. It's not like the regular season or the preseason. It's very hard to gauge. But in general, what you want to hear and what would be a good sign during camp is that both sides are going at it. The defense is winning one drill, the offense is winning another. And the good news for Browns fans is that's exactly what's been happening from everything that I can gather at camp. That's what's been going down. Everybody I trust has been saying, hey, look, Deshaun was dominating in 11-on-11s. Then they got the 7-on-7s and he was dominating in that. And then they got the red zone drills and the defense got their lick back. That's good football. That's what good football looks like. I think we forget what good football looks like sometimes. We know what it is when we see it, but the problem is we're not seeing it. You know what I mean? But that's good football. going back and forth, both sides competing. That's going to make everybody better. It would not make the offense better if they could just walk through the defense like cake. It would not make the defense any better if they could just dominate the Browns offense like nothing. What makes a team better is that back and forth. When we talk about iron sharpening iron, that's what it is. That's the iron sharpening iron. Now let's talk about some more specific individual stuff. We've gone in with Deshaun Watson. He's looked great. You know, I've heard pretty good things from him. He looks like how he has all offseason program. It seems like all that is going to be what it's going to be. And look, if this continues on for a couple more weeks, if the reports are good coming out of joint practices in Philly, then I'm ready to say, hey, he's probably back to what he was before. If not even better, we have to see that on the field. But if he continues this up until that point, then we're in good hands at quarterback. And it's crazy for me to say nonchalantly, given this franchise's history, but that would be the case. If they get past joint practice, I would have very little concern. I talked about it before. I'm at like a 70% sure on Deshaun. I would probably jump to about an 80. And once we're at 80, I'm going to let it play out. I'm not going to really be stressing about it that much. But yeah, he's looked fine. Let's talk about Elijah Moore, who's been turning a lot of heads in camp. Man, it seems like every day there's a new clip of Elijah Moore running a crisp route, of Elijah Moore breaking one off. I saw one that I'm pretty sure everybody saw that watches this channel, where Elijah Moore broke off Denzel Ward on a double move, slipped, and still was open enough to get the ball. I don't think people understand how impressive that is to shake Denzel Ward so much that you can slip and still be open versus him when he has some of the best closing speed in all of football. Very impressive stuff from Elijah Moore. It doesn't seem like catching the football has been a problem. His route running has been crisp. It looks like the chemistry has been great. We have gotten like 8 days from Elijah Moore and Deshaun Watson in practice that we never got from Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham in 3 years. Like, how many days of practice? Like, I can remember like two days in the 3 years that Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham were together, where they had, you know, a day where they had stuff that made you excited. So that's a great sign. That's a great sign that the fit is there, right? Because individually, these two players could be good, but the fit has to be there. And that's very important for this team. So that fit looks like it's there with him. Jordan Atkins had a pretty impressive catch. Hey, keep your eye out on him. I can't help but keep my eye out on Jordan Atkins. There's just something about him that makes me feel like he might be a little bit more of a factor than what people are anticipating. I have the same feeling with David Bell. I think he's going to be a little bit more of a factor than what people are anticipating. Once Deshaun is comfortable, I think a lot of those crisp route runner type guys like Elijah Moore and David Bell, they're really going to benefit from that. And then we saw Cedric Tillman even working with Deshaun on some of that comeback stuff. So, you know, we know how abysmal the scramble drill stuff was last year. So that can just get up to standard. And I think they'll be all right there. They could take advantage of another element of Deshaun Watson's game. So I think that offensively, I'm not concerned. I think that they're moving along quite well. It's funny because they're in a new offense, right? Like they've been talking about this new offense that they're building, but you don't see that when you watch them out there. Or I haven't heard a lot of people talk about growing pains, or you could tell that they're learning new things and installing new things and things aren't moving at the fastest pace that they can. It seems like they've gotten the install of all the new stuff down and they're working on details, which is pretty spectacular given that we're at the beginning point of where most people are for training camp. Browns get that extra week because of the Hall of Fame game. So that's a great spot to be in. That's a great spot offensively. Defensively, they look good. I was worried about bad habits. I'm still worried about bad habits, but to the defense's credit, I haven't seen a ton of those pop up in the highlights, right? When I'm seeing the big highlights out of camp, it's not because the same kind of dysfunction on cover twos happening, or because somebody fell asleep in the zone somewhere, or because somebody decided to be aggressive when they shouldn't. Now, again, these things can really, like, practice is one thing, but when that game adrenaline hits a player, that's when those bad habits really start to kick up. That's when the penalty stuff starts to kick up. So we're not really going to know till the regular season, but all the signs that I could look at right now give me positive vibes that maybe the bad habits aren't going to be something that this defense spends weeks trying to recover from, especially in the secondary, where I think they've improved the most. People have slept on how much improvement has happened in that secondary. Juan Thornhill, Ronnie McLeod, Grant Delpit being able to be put in a more natural position for him is a huge upgrade, right? We've been having Grant Delpit out of position for like 3 years. Now he finally gets to be in a more natural position, closer to the line of scrimmage, where he could do some of the stuff that he was special in last year when it comes to that run stoppage, when it comes to some of that blitzing, like when it comes to being able to kind of fake out quarterbacks and then drop back deep and use his recovery speed. Like, I think he has a lot there to offer them as kind of a big, strong safety, but a fast, strong safety kind of a prototype. I think there's a lot to do with him. And Jim Schwartz is there. He knows what to do with dudes like him. He's had guys like that in the past before. So all of this comes down. We're not going to know much about the defensive line. They haven't had pads on. We're not going to know much about the offensive line. They haven't had pads on. I'm not going to know much about Jerome Ford. They haven't had pads on. So those positions are limited. But what I have been able to look at is secondary, is wide receiver, is quarterback, and all that stuff looks good. Now, again, the trenches were a huge problem for this team, specifically on the defensive side. So once those pads can come on, we could be like, oh, God, there's a problem. But they have made upgrades, right? Oboe, they put in Zadarius Smith, Myles Garrett, Alex Wright. He can move inside, outside. You could do something with him. Dalvin Tomlinson. They put in work on their defensive line to make sure it's not a disaster like last year. But there's still a lot of concern there, but we'll see. Once pads get on, once we see some of these guys, especially some of the defensive tackles in these preseason games, we'll have a better idea of what's going on there. But all in all, my impressions from what I know in the first week of camp is that this team is on the right path. I think they're headed towards where they need to. I see no reason to be afraid or to panic right now. It's just 1 week of camp. Most of it wasn't even most of it was in shells. It wasn't in pads, full pads. So take it with a grain of salt. This doesn't mean that the Browns are going undefeated this year, but I do think that the Browns look pretty good so far through 1 week of camp. Again, the big week of practice is going to be that joint practice versus the Eagles. What we hear out of there is really going to be what dictates what the barometer is going into the season, right? Because that's the most important week of week of work in this whole offseason program. So keep your ears out when that happens, but we're going to continue to cover this team, talk about everything that's going on. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night.